in the field of cybersecurity. This activity is new in our lifetime. It has become necessary to protect our institutions as digital age crime has become a regular part of our lives. Jarrett is the founder and CEO of his company known as Spear Tip, based in St. Louis. Jarrett's background is as a former counterintelligence special agent in the U.S. Army. His civil work has included investigations of Chinese cyber espionage, Russian extortion, hostile corporate takeovers, rogue IT personnel, hacktivists. That was a term I'd never heard of. I've heard of hackers, but I like that term, hacktivists, international wire fraud, and ransomware cases. Finally, he serves on professional boards and has taught at Maryville and Washington universities. It is timely that Jarrett is with us this month, as October is National Cybersecurity Month. With that, Jarrett, welcome to the Fell Group.
Good. Thank you for having me, everybody. I appreciate your time. Let me share a screen with you to kind of lead some of the conversations, but I want you to feel free to ask any questions that you may have throughout the presentation. The presentation I'm going to give you in the PowerPoint that I have is the same one or similar to one that we give large corporations. But I would also imagine that some of you may also sit on some advisory boards as a board of director, or you may know somebody that's on a board. So maybe you can kind of take some of that data back to them. At the very end, we will talk about how this may affect you personally, and just give you some ideas how you might be able to protect your own access to some of the private data you have, whether that's email or financial or even some medical access, some of your records. So I'm going to buzz through here. If you have any questions, Meredith is going to take care of the any questions you may have. So just raise your hand, and we'll address those. Judith, actually, sorry. So this is a picture of myself, former special agent, U.S. Army counterintelligence, left governmental in '99, and then 2005 we started our firm and helping organizations deal with the threats that you hear about today on a daily basis. Let me get this advancing here. That's a picture of our Security Operations Center, the same one you see behind me. So it's real. That's not a green screen behind me, and people are always there protecting corporations, helping them and defending against the adversary. In days of old, and when I was an agent back in the 90s, we did a lot of espionage work that, in the truest sense of espionage, whether we had an agent handler or spies, and we transferred data back and forth, either photos or paper. A lot of that has gone electronic, and so a lot of the espionage or counter-espionage activity we conducted back then, we're now doing the same thing for corporations, but it's via computers and installing the bad guys will install bad programs inside of corporations and try to pull that data out. And our role as civilians now is to help those companies defend against those guys, defend against those type of attacks, and then also at times identify who they are and get a game plan to go after them. These are just a bit of icons. Various members of the armed forces here, many different law enforcement or counterintelligence perspective. We have all the technical certifications that you can think of. And then many of us here at the firm, we adjunct at WashU, Lindenwood, Maryville, SLU, and then also we're affiliated with Florida International University down in Florida. And so try to give back to the community and educate the new students that are coming on board, because we're always trying to find and funnel in new talent as we scale as an organization to the world and defending against the adversary. Have you guys all heard of ransomware in general, or maybe unfortunately maybe been a victim of that, where your computer is locked up, it's encrypted, and they tell that you have a little screen that comes up and say, hey, pay us this amount in ransom, or pay us in Bitcoin, and then we'll unlock your computer. So that's what the most of the type of attacks companies are victims to today. Sometimes you get that at home users, but for the most part, most of the big ransoms that you hear about in the news are coming in and encrypting organizations, and then the bad guy overseas, whether they're Chinese, Russian, Romanians, or whomever, even some here in the States, they will then contact them and say, we'll unlock all of your stuff if you pay us a good amount of money. And so that varies upon the threat actor. We call them the threat actor. It's the adversary that's out there. The one that you're going to hear about in the news mostly is, if you guys remember the Garmin compromise, or the Garmin encryption that took place, goodness, about maybe 30 days, 45 days ago, a few months ago or so. If you had a Garmin watch, or if you can think of any of the technology that Garmin is in, some of the even aircraft, Garmin watches, anything that utilizes that GPS technology. So Garmin was targeted by a company called, they have cute little names, Evil Corp. Evil Corp is a Russian criminal cyber gang or group inside of Russia. A lot of the nation states that you once heard about, the days of old of the Soviets and Russia, now they've simply just rebranded. They're same people. They rebranded their badge and they're called FSB. The FSB inside of Russia is working with hacking groups, one in particular called the Evil Corp. They've utilized a piece of bad programming, encryption programming called Wasted Locker. That's the name of the bad program that they use to encrypt and attack Garmin. And so what happened was, Evil Corp specifically targeted Garmin to pull all of that intellectual property out of Garmin, because Evil Corp then passed that data off to the Russian FSB, the intelligence group, and then Russia is now using a lot of the intellectual property and sensitive data from Garmin for national security purposes. As we all know, Garmin, if you don't, I'm telling you now, Garmin has dual use technology used for the civilian sector, and also technology used for the national security of the U.S. government. And so that's why the Russians are now using and utilizing these hacking groups to go attack U.S. corporations, and then pulling that sensitive data out. And once that data is gone, and once they pull that out and pass it off to the FSB, the Russian intelligence agencies, they then go and encrypt for financial payoff. And so it's a dual-edged sword here with Evil Corp. They pay that they give that information off to the Russian intelligence groups, and then they also get a huge payout. Evil Corp is ran by two Russians, Yukubits and Turashev. These two individuals are just two of many cyber groups or cyber criminals. We've had a number of cases here at our firm, and we'll go over them here in a second, relative to the Russians and a lot of other different nation states. But these two in particular were responsible for attacking and encrypting Garmin. Some of the cases we've had here, on the far right, you see the guy that says arrested with the American flag up top. That individual was brought over to the United States recently. The Dark Overlord Group, you may have heard of this. He recently came back to St. Louis in, I think it was April or May timeframe. One of our cases that we ran, that we investigated, we investigated the client that he attacked, and then several months later, the attack actually took place, goodness, I'd say about 8 years ago. And it's just, these investigations do take a long time. And then just recently they were able to nab him and then bring him over to the U.S. for he was arrested, and also he was sentenced to, I think, about 6 or 7 years in prison. So that guy was one of our cases. And over next one was another American flag. That was a member here in St. Louis called the Anonymous Group. He attacked, if you guys remember, maybe probably another 10 years ago, Mayor Slave's website when he was mayor. His website was attacked. This was a part of the 99 percenters, or the 1%ers, the Occupy Wall Street, that were, this is a good example. We talked earlier about hacktivist. This is an activist that hacked. So that we blend those two together, and they're called hacktivists. And so they hack for purposes that they themselves believe is right. And so they attacked state websites here in the States, and then also several websites in Israel. This particular individual, he attacked 3 hospitals in Israel. One of them was a cancer patient hospital for children, and he published all of that private data of these poor children that were suffering from cancer inside of Israel. The reason he attacked the Israeli hospitals was because he had an Iranian girlfriend. And so that's, for whatever reasons, these guys make decisions, bad decisions. Many of them are because of personal problems and issues that they have. But that was one of our anonymous members. He spent 18 months in federal prison. The middle one is Bogachev. Bogachev was a Russian kingpin. He was indicted from one of our cases, was a $7 million wire fraud out of Florida. A banker's bank was compromised, and then one of his, they call them money mules. So he himself didn't go try to pull out the 7 million. He asked one of his underlings to go travel to Zurich and pull out the 7 million. Well, when he physically went into Zurich, and why, this is his last mistake, why this money mule had the money go to a Western friendly country. We were able to nab, Interpol was able to go in and nab him, then pull the 7 million, and the 7 million was recovered. But obviously Bogachev isn't coming out of Russia. He's staying safe there, and it's gonna be pretty darn hard to get him out to bring him to justice. But you know, it's good press for the FBI to be able to indict him. And then as we go over the 2 individuals there, those are the Romanian hack team. That was a case years ago called eBay PayPal scam. Maybe we received a bunch of fraudulent or phishing attacks that looked like it was eBay, but in fact it really wasn't eBay. And you would log in with your credentials, and then they would conduct a bunch of fraud cases. And this group here was arrested several months after we passed this information off to the FBI, and then they were arrested inside of Romania. And then the far left is a Russian or a Chinese bad actor. He was a part of a $5 million wire fraud out of Denver, publicly traded company out of Denver that we investigated. And then so 2.5 of the 5 million was able to be recovered. Once again, all the bad guys that I'm showing you here, it's because many times when we're able to identify who they are, it's because the bad guys, they get lazy, arrogant, and they make mistakes. And so there are times when all of these hacking incidents, we can't identify who it was, and then we pass that data and information off to the different federal agencies. Not all the time, but there are times when it is available and an option for us. What's different from us than other security companies, it's our background and pedigree, per se, of the individuals within our firm, that we don't, we are very technical, but we also analyze and investigate. There is a law out there called Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, CFAA. CFAA does not allow us to do hack back or hacking the hackers. We can't do that. But through our investigations, these guys leave little crumbs of evidence that we can identify and we use for our investigation. And using that investigatory type of talent and expertise, that's why we're able to identify who they are and at times identify and find them. Here's a couple of different type of case studies that dives a little bit deeper in some of these. This was a $7 million one that I referenced with Bogachev. as many of you may or may not know, regional banks do not have the ability to send international wires. So the regional banks have to send a request to a banker's bank. And then, so if they would send an international wire, they would go to a local one here in Missouri is called MIB, Midwest Independent Bank. And the regional banks would send the wire to MIB, then MIB would send an international wire. This particular attack occurred down in Florida, and the regional bank was compromised. The banker's bank, where they sent the international wire, then they sent it over to Zurich, as you see here. And then from Zurich, it went over, or I'm sorry, went to Boehm Ltd. Insurance to Cyprus, and then went to Zurich. So US, Cyprus, and then Zurich. This is where Sergey came in, born in Moscow, traveling on a Moldovan passport, went into Zurich, and then as he was pulling the money out, he was able to be arrested. This case was a part of a larger case against Bogachev, as you see here, my cursor. Bogachev is the picture I showed earlier. And then the bottom one here was our particular case. This is part of the federal indictment against Bogachev. And then this is the wanted poster that you see from the Russian kingpin. He probably will he will never leave the confines and protection of Russia, and because in fear of the Western agencies here in the States, Bureau of Secret Service, would bring him back to justice. Another case. So that was a wire fraud case. This other one is another wire fraud case, but this is very similar to emails that you may get yourself. So many of you may get emails asking you to log into a bank account, or let's say you don't have a Wells Fargo account, and you get an email saying, "Hey, I need you to log into your Wells Fargo account," and then as you're logging in, it's going to ask you for credentials. Or let's say you do have a Wells Fargo account, because if you don't, you just delete it. But if you do, you may log in, and you thinking you're logging into Wells Fargo, it may look like Wells Fargo, but in reality, it's not. And then when you do that, you're giving the bad guys access to all your financial data and the ability to ACH or wire out information or wire out money. This particular case is similar in such that it's not a Wells Fargo, but they emailed the controller of a publicly traded company. And so the controller inside of a publicly traded company has the ability to send international wires out as much as they want. Obviously, the size of the account. This particular scenario was a publicly traded company sent this fraudulent email called confidential. It came from the CEO, looked like from the CEO. The anti-spam technology that they use inside this corporation caught it, but she went into that anti-spam technology and then released this email to come back to her. And so the security stuff, the security operation, it worked, but she went into the security apparatus, the technology, said, no, that's a good email. Go ahead and send it to me. So when she got it here on her desktop, it basically looked like it came from the CEO, instructed her to send $5 million off to a bank in Hong Kong. Once again, this is a publicly traded company. And so as you well, I'm sure many of you are aware, in publicly traded companies, any type of acquisition can't be shared with anybody because that may affect the stock price. And then you have insider trading. And so all of these types of transactions need to be very, my old world, we called it close hold, meaning that you held close that information and you can't share that with very many people. So the purchase of this company, purported purchase of this company, she thought she was communicating with the CEO. She then proceeds to wire out $5 million to a bank in Hong Kong. And then inside of Hong Kong bank, it went 5 million in, and then 5-6 layers deep per se in funneling in sub accounts. It transferred all these sub accounts to 5 million. 2.5 million we're able to recover, as I said earlier, in the pictures that I showed you, and I'll show you here in a second again. But we had 5 individuals we identified that that were part of the fraud. So this gives you an idea, and I'm peeling apart the veil that you may not see when you get these fraudulent emails in your email account, or your loved ones, or maybe the companies you're on boards on, or whatever. This is the other side of the act, the criminal side. So we went to the locations of the 5 individuals. They had addresses, and we took pictures. And some of this was inside of the People's Republic of China, inside of PRC. And then some of these photos that you see here are photos inside of Hong Kong proper. We had to do that because the publicly traded company wanted to be able to show that this is a large criminal group that was perpetuating this fraud, because they didn't have proper cyber insurance. They were trying to claim under the crime umbrella, and then be able to tie that back to individuals within the publicly traded company. And so it was a pretty big scheme. At least they tried to show that so they could be able to use insurance to claim the 5 million. It didn't work for the publicly traded company to claim it on insurance, but they had us go do this in an attempt to, because they had no other way to be able to recover via insurance. As I stated earlier, here are the 5 individuals that were on the bank accounts, on all these sub accounts inside of Hong Kong. The far right is the picture of when he opened the account, and then we're able to use our intelligence collections, and we actually identify the individual in the red box of the color picture. That is a good recent picture of him and his address inside of Hong Kong, which we passed off to the FBI. All this information, we are able to use our experience as agents and then as cyber experts, and be able to collect this information, analyze it, and give it to the federal agencies. So once again, this gives you a perspective and a picture of what does it mean, what do we do here in our Security Operations Center, and those that fight this battle on a daily basis. As you see the picture there, that is a picture of our Security Operations Center here behind me. Staffed 24/7, 365, constantly monitoring and using various technical means to be able to collect against the bad guys as they attack individuals or corporations. Most of our work is for corporations, but as I stated earlier, many of you may be on boards, or were once on a board, or were once an executive of a corporation. This is the support mechanism that many companies are looking to today to help protect them against the adversary, because the battle changes so quickly, and helping companies be able to defend against these type of attacks requires somebody to do this 24/7 for them. What do we utilize? Over the years, we've developed our own technology. It's ShadowSpear. So the ShadowSpear platform leverages all that counterintelligence backgrounds, and then blends that all into technology. And in our vernacular, once again, it's our tradecraft, our methodology on how we attack and defend against these guys. But that's our piece of technology that we use. As many companies, as they look to see how do we address these risks, attempt to look at insurance down the road long term to be able to address and even recover from these type of attacks, because there's no defensive barrier that you can build that you're 100% protected. That's why they engage people like us to monitor 24/7. But in so doing, another element to that on the financial piece is how do we recover from a financial loss? So many companies are looking to see what risk can I transfer over to insurance, and that's a methodology to do enterprise-wide to look at risk management issues. It's just not an IT or technical problem. You look at business interruptions. So if many companies are defending against, as I stated earlier, ransomware, or their computers, or their technical environment, that is all encrypted. And then you have the Chinese and the Russians saying, hey, I'll let you unencrypt your environment, but you got to pay me $2 million or $1 million. And if you'll pay me the money, here are the keys, here are the special keys that you can go and decrypt, and then you can go about your business. The issue with that is, just because you pay the ransom doesn't always mean that you're going to get all your data back. It gets more technical than I would want to go into now in this forum, but just know that just because you pay the ransom, you may get some of it back, but because of the complexity of all of this data, this large data sets, the decryption process is not all that clean. And so, many times you get most of it back, but it's not always. And then also understanding the legal implications from these type of attacks. Many of the times, and you may be experiencing this, you may get an email or a letter from some company that you deal with that said, hey, all of your data has been compromised, or your private information was a part of a data set that was compromised from a healthcare provider or a bank or a credit card issuer. And then that's what this is on the back end of what happens. Once there's a compromise, these corporations will then send letters out to members of the community or members of their clients and say, hey, your information was shared, it was compromised, the bad guys have it, here's a year or two of free credit monitoring. And then that's what happens on the legal piece after a compromise has occurred. Because there's reporting requirements, and each state is different. The most stringent today is California. New York and California have a continual battle between each other, which one can be more stringent. But New York or California currently has the most onerous elements of those requirements to report of that personal identifiable information, PII. In our world, we call it that private client data. And then also just understanding what the risk appetite is, whether that's for the boards you may be on or individually. We'll talk about that. I'm going to transition in what this means to you individually. Understand what that risk appetite is for you. You may not, and that's a good question. I just thought about this. I don't think there are any cyber insurance that insures individuals, but maybe we'll look into that. I don't think there are. But if there is a way to get a policy to be able to cover maybe a financial loss on the cyber side, you might want to talk to your individual broker about that. That I'm not sure. Corporations, yes. Individual, I'm not sure. But some of the lessons learned for you guys, review. I'm sure you all have email. I'm sure you all have access to all your financial data, whether that's your 401ks, your stocks, your even some of your medical data. Review all of your current passwords and ensure that no one password is used across all of your different technology. Make sure all of those are different. And you can't write them down, well, you could, but I suggest you don't do that. My suggestion is use a piece of technology called a password manager. The password manager, some of the products, and there are many other products. So if you're using one, and I don't have it listed here, keep it. I'm sure it's great. These are just some of the ones that I'm aware of and the ones that we use. LastPass, 1Password, or Keeper. Those three are the three top ones. You can download those password managers, and you can store all of your passwords, and you can even have them generate a new password for you. And so you can have a different password for every different website you have. Because it's near impossible. It is impossible to remember very complex passwords across all of the different platforms and portals and online accounts that you may have. But make sure every online account is different, and you can manage that via a password manager. And then immediately, once you get all that squared away and you're ready to go, immediately enable two-factor authentication. Now, you may not know what that is, but two-factor authentication in a generic sense, you're going to have to look in the settings of each application, and they're all different. Look at the security settings of all these web applications and try to enable two-factor authentication. Sometimes two-factor authentication is simply a text to your phone, which gives you a PIN number to log in with your password. Or it's an application called Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator. And you'll have to read up on different websites that you may be looking at. But it's one of the two things. It's either a PIN that's texted to your phone, or it's a little application on your iPhone per se called Authenticator that you can use, and then it gives you a piece of code, a PIN number that you enter in with your password. But look at those two different things, and I would apply that to your email, all your financial data, and all your medical websites that you may have access to. Very, very critical you do that. If you learned anything today, two things: password manager and two-factor authentication. If you do those two things, even heaven forbid, even if you do fall for these phishing attacks, you do, whatever. If you do those two things, this will help stop the bad guy, even if you do give away your password, even if it's very, very complex. But just keep that in mind.
Jarrett,
Password manager, two-factor. You have a question?
there's a question from Gloria Morgenstein who wants to know why can't you use the same password?
Good question. So if let's say you have a website at the Marriott Center or some type of portal where you have some of your data. If that website's compromised, or if that web portal is compromised by the bad guy, and then they have access to all your username and passwords from that web application, from that portal, from that website, they can then take all that username and passwords, and then they can use that same username and password against your financial information. So if it's, let's say maybe you may or may not be a part of the MAC, and the MAC has, or the JCCA or whoever, and they have access to your account, your login account, and then it's also mapped to your email address. And so you have the password and the email address, and then they go to the top 10 online banking companies out there, and they use the same combination of username and passwords. Then, bam, they're inside of your financial data, right? Now, I said you do two things, right? I said change passwords that are different, but then I also said stated change and enable two-factor authentication. So even if you did do that and they logged into Wells Fargo or some type of financial or commerce or US Bank or wherever, you still enable two-factor, they're going to send the PIN to your cell phone. And so the bad guy's still not going to be able to get on. But don't rely upon two-factor solely. But that's a good example as to why you would want to have different passwords for different web portals. Does it make sense? Okay. And then the third bullet here, if you have computers at your house, or if you're still running a small business in your current position, career, or whatever, there's backup solutions, cloud backup solutions that you can install pretty easily. These are geared. The ones I'm listing here is for the home use. There's much larger enterprise type of technology. The three I have here are good for the home use. Carbonite, Backblaze, and iDrive. Once again, there are other bigger and more better per se for the enterprise, but these here are good for individuals. I have not used these, so I'm not. There's no guarantee here, but the research that I've done for the home use, these are the ones that came as highly regarded. What is that? What do these do? You install a piece of technology on your hard drive on your computer, and it takes a backup and it leaves a copy of your hard drive so that you can recover if your computer is ever encrypted from the bad guys. So that's one of the main reasons why this is the fail-safe thing you can do, that if I click on a bad link and all of a sudden my hard drive is encrypted, I can go back somewhere and get a good clean copy and reinstall. Was there a question, Judith?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Well, so you say that the two things we should definitely remember is the password manager, to download that, and then this other is backup solutions. Check out backup solutions.
The two primary is the password manager, like you just referenced. That's the first thing. The second thing is two-factor authentication, which means
What do you call that?
Two-factor. Two-factor. It means that it's two things that you have. The one thing that you have is a password, and you need one more thing to help authenticate you to these different web portals. That other thing could be, as you log into these web portals, let's use Gmail as an example. Gmail, you can log into Gmail and say, or even iCloud, and say, okay, I have a complex password, great, put in my password, and then go into the settings with the Gmail or iCloud, and you can say, I want two-factor authentication. And then you can put in your phone number, and it will text you a PIN to type in to Gmail or iCloud or some other type of email apparatus or portal, and then that'll allow you to authenticate. So there's two things. There's the password, and then you have that PIN. That's the two-factor.
Okay. And then my other, doesn't the FBI have the technical abilities that you have?
Most of the people that have our capabilities it's pretty well centered on out of DC, out of their lab. So most of your field offices don't have the scalability and the breadth of the technical aptitude of our firm, and that's just the nature of the beast. There's just not. It's very, very technical, and people that do stay in, a lot of us have left governmental, but those that do stay in, there's a few labs on the East Coast out of DC that have the aptitude, but they're inundated with many other things, and so that's why we stay so busy helping corporations with these type of issues, because Secret Service and the Bureau, they don't have the bandwidth to address these issues.
So the information that you get, in other words, they need you to give them information, and they can take it from there.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, in fact, that's a lot of our cases end up that way.
And then the other thing I was wondering is, why isn't information on the internet labeled like like a food label? Because we don't have any idea whether it's real or not.
Right.
So how come the internet companies are not required to label the information?
That's just the way the internet was built years ago, that there is no real regulation in the internet. It's the wild, wild west when it comes to how true is that data. That's why it's very important of understanding it's very important to understand the source of the information that's provided to you, whether that's through, and I'm not getting political here, but whether that's through news, whether that's through print media, digital media, any type of website, because you can put anything out on the internet, and there are a number of parody websites, political parody websites that are out there that make fun of the different on both sides, but knowing where the source is, you just understand that. But there is no group that regulates or can regulate the accuracy of the information on the website, on the internet.
Mark, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have one. I sort of typed it in, but does facial recognition for passwords suffice and allow you to feel more secure than what you've been talking about?
Facial recognition is the only, so if you're talking about your iPhone, that will work. If you have a laptop, there's no facial recognition that's utilized on laptops unless you have a third-party device. But the thing that I can think of mostly is iPhone. So use the iPhone that's secure. That would be two-factor, because you have your phone, you have your password, bless you. Got your phone, get your password, and then your two-factor piece is actually three. And then the third piece is actually doing the facial recognition.
Oh, I'm not seeing any
Okay.
more.
So
Jared, I wonder, this information that you have on this particular slide, is this something that you would be willing to share, like with this, either with an email to me, or if we could have a copy of this slide? Because
I'll send this to you, but one thing I want to touch on a couple more of these.
Sure.
This is non-technical stuff that you can do, meaning take some phishing classes. What is that? What the heck does that mean? So phishing classes in our world, once again, every industry has their strange words or nomenclatures for what we do. Phishing are the emails that you get in your email box that makes you think that it's your bank, makes you think that it's your hospital or your doctor or something, or you received a fax and you said, well, I don't remember seeing a fax, but I'm gonna go and click on it. Or there's a voicemail come to you and you think, well, how did my voicemail on my phone get to my email? It didn't. What they're doing is they want you to click on that voicemail. When you click on that voicemail link, it's gonna encrypt your hard drive. So how do you combat against that? Because you're still gonna get the emails no matter what. So you can go to a phishing class, go to the company's called No B4. It's listed here, and I'll send that out to you guys. There's some training things on the website that will help you identify. Now this is mostly for corporations, but as I went to this website, I said, well, there's also some good learnings that you as individuals can use. Just go to the website and you can learn a little bit what the bad guys use and how they're doing these things, and not to trust emails that come to you, because just because they sent the email to you doesn't mean they actually know you. And so all of our emails, all of our private data, for the most part, has been compromised. That's the other thing. So don't be shocked that somebody has your username. Don't be shocked somebody has your password, because so many websites are compromised now today. That's why it's really important to not only have a complex password with your password manager, but also change those passwords periodically, maybe every 90 days or 6 months or so, 6 months at the max. And then you can help manage those passwords through the password manager. And then if you have a big set of computers or something, you may want to look to a local IT expert. We don't work for people or personnel per se, but there are a number of local IT experts that are out there that if you need some help, you can, there are a number of people you could sign up service for. And then the last bullet here is simply understand your personal risk. If you're an individual's net worth isn't that high, okay, that's fine. But your risk appetite may be a little bit lower. But if your personal or family net worth is extremely high, your personal risk appetite, you may not want to simply just say, no, I don't need to invest in anything. But if your net worth is very, very high, look to a local IT expert to help them build capabilities to defend and protect for your family. So just something to think about, that not everybody needs to go to all these measures, but if you're in a position in your life and your career and family wealth, that's something you should really look at.
Jarrett, we have two questions. Enid and then Steve have their hand up. So Enid, if you would go first.
What I want to know is my computer offers to save my passwords. Now, I will let it do it for, say, the Merowitz Center or the J, but what about, say, the bank? Should I not allow it to do that?
I would not, and I would avoid doing that. I know that's cumbersome. The reason I say not to do that is because a lot of the bad programs that the bad guys install and attack you with, that is the very first area that these bad programs goes and tries to collect. Is there's a data store, there's a file on your computer that stores all that information, and these bad programs will attack that first. And as they attack that file, it's going to collect all your username and passwords you have in that file. It's going to ship it off to the bad guy. They'll have the website, the username, and the password for all these websites that you have. If the bad program installs on your hard drive, and if you noticed, I did not annotate a particular antivirus program. I didn't do that because most of your antivirus programs are about 15% effective. I mean, very, very minimal. And so you have to go, now the answer for corporations is they have this behind me. They have this protecting them. And we have our own technology. For individuals, it's nearly impossible to defend against these type of attacks. Now, if you're a mid-sized company, we work with IT providers that have a bunch of smaller clients. We work with the IT providers that help their smaller clients. We work through the IT providers. But that's the closest thing that somebody like us that can help these companies. But for an individual, go ahead, you're gonna have to have something. Look at Malwarebytes or something, some other type of antivirus program that's out there. Get that installed, make sure it's updated, just to have something. Microsoft Defender is also a good type of AV tool, antivirus tool. But I didn't mention it because these other things you have to be doing to protect, because most of your bad programs can't be caught by antivirus.
Jarrett, Steve Rudinsky,
Yeah, I just had a quick second question, and that it sort of came to me that if I was one of these bad guys, I'd like to hack into a password manager. I mean, are they attacked?
They are. I think it was Keeper. I think LastPass and both Keeper were attacked a couple years ago. Everything can be attacked. You just have to keep abreast of that and know that, you know, these compromises are published pretty quickly. So if you find out the Keeper or 1Password or LastPass was compromised, you would need to go in there and change all your passwords from the password manager. But you're right, they are attacked, but you got to start somewhere, and I would rather rely upon them than have multiple passwords or even writing them down.
Steve?
Yeah, hi. First, where are you located at?
Manchester 270 in St. Louis.
In St. Louis here, yeah. My son is Chief Compliance Officer of Northwell. That's the largest hospital in New York. 23 hospitals, 800 outpatient clinics, 3,000. They employ over 3,000 doctors. And about 2 years ago, they did the bad guys got in and ransomware for one of their hospitals. It was a new hospital. They hadn't gotten proper backup yet into, and luckily they had everything backed up, and I don't think they had to pay. But this is almost on a daily or weekly basis that they are attacked either from the outside or from their own employees trying to steal information. Many times the FBI is calling him from Louisiana, telling him that they found their face sheets down in Louisiana. And then they have to set up stings within the hospital to try to catch the culprits, their own employees that are doing this. So this not only comes from the outside, but it comes from the inside. When he started working there about 15 years ago, he spent no time. Now he says he spends at least 60 or 70% of his time just doing cybersecurity and people trying to steal from him. So it's really, it's an evolving industry, and I can hate to see what it is another 15 years from now.
Yeah, it's always changing on a daily basis.
It's always changing day to day, and he never has a dull day.
Right.
He's chasing the bad guys, not only in Russia but also within his own hospital network.
True. Yeah, I bet.
Jarrett? Bill Livingston has a question. He asked, can I erase passwords stored on my computer?
Yes, you can go into the web browser and you can clear your website data, and then that will all go away. Each different browser has a way to do that, but you can Google and figure out how to do it for each browser, but you can clear all that data from the web browser.
Is that the same as clearing history?
No.
I've got a comment too. There's a recent group, as I understand it, known as the Dragonfly or the Energy Bear, and they hack energy sectors and power grids and water treatment facilities and nuclear power plants, and they recently have hacked into Wi-Fi systems at airports. But my question for you is, and I don't know, if it's a pretty broad question, I guess, which do you think is the worst as far as cyber attacks? Russia, China, or Iran? To me, it seems to be Russia now. But I don't know, of course, half as much as you do, or anything like you do.
Well, each group presents, and I'm just speaking generically, each group presents different types of attacks. The Russians, for the most part, are theft of national secrets. So they're stealing high levels intellectual property or national security secrets. Examples: Garmin, the F-30. That's the Chinese, but a lot of the national state secrets are stolen from the Russian. We're just talking about the Russian government. Russian cyber groups, many of those are financial. Those are bad, but we can recover. Some of the national secrets stolen by the Russians. The bad part about that is source information, counter-espionage information, source data. A lot of those people are killed, and so that's a negative, and that's the reality of it. The Russians are looking to identify who inside of Russia is helping U.S. Intelligence agencies, and once they find that data, our sources are killed. So that's kind of the Russian piece. The Iranians, for the most part, are targeting dual-use technology. A lot of it over the years were rocket and nuclear intellectual property and technology. They were using that to fund and funnel and create their nuclear program. And then obviously we had our way with them with respect to with our malware that we deployed. And so that's with the help of the government, with help of Israel and also Germany. And so that's the Iranians. The Chinese, their primary focus is intellectual property theft for their industry. So you will see secret formulas or data being stolen. We have a number, I won't name them, but we have a number of entities here in St. Louis region that are targeted by the Chinese to steal a lot of that intellectual property because it's easier to steal it than it is to create it. And so they actually target for that purpose. The Chinese also are targeting our military technology, our stealth technology, F-35 data. As we all know and have heard over the years that they have created a like plane. Obviously, there's discussions as to how useful it is. It may look like it, but it may not fly like it. And so, but that's each group presents a different problem. Is there one worse than the other? No, they're all pretty bad. The one thing that I think would be more devastating to us defined to the U.S. is when they're attacking our infrastructure, and that's across the board. All three groups have access and have attacked and have profiled our water, our gas, our nuclear, our critical infrastructure in the U.S. All three of those primary groups have attacked us, and we, all of us battle that on a daily basis.
Thank you.
Yep.
Norman, do you have a question?
I have one more.
Norman, you need to unmute. There we go.
Yes, Jarrett. We hear a lot currently about our election and being interfered with foreigners. First of all, how effective is what they're doing to our election process? And secondly, is it enough to really affect voting at all, or is it just something we brush off because we're so spread out with all of our county elections?
You took me there, Norm. I'm just kidding you. This is nothing new. The Russians have been doing this for years and years and years. They've always have attempted to interfere in our elections. Let's say, I won't use the word interfere, affect. They've always tried to affect our elections one way or another. Just as the same, we have done the exact same thing to other countries. We do the same thing. It's blown up out of proportion more so, but it's simply, think of it along the lines of there's a difference between having active measures of changing votes compared to disinformation. So the primary goal of a lot of our adversaries is to change opinion and to provide disinformation to sway and to breed discourse inside of the U.S. and both left and right. They don't have a preference. Well, they do. Each election they'll have a preference as to who they want to be elected, but it's mostly disinformation as opposed to hacking in and changing votes. I think you're going to get the active measures of affecting the vote count more so along the lines of extremists on both ends of the parties, internal, as opposed to having nation states actually changing votes. There are some reports that are coming out that the Chinese have pretty clear lines with some of the extremist groups that you're seeing today. I won't name them, but some of the extremist groups that you've heard on the news, there's some pretty clear lines, definitive evidence that support the Chinese funding some of this anarchist activity. And so that's their MO, as opposed to going in and hacking voter technology. Now, with that said, why in the world we would put some of these voting devices online is beside. I have no idea why they would do that. Those need to be close hold technologies. Then it's very, very well secured. Is it the most secured as it could be? No. But that's why you find a lot of people still doing paper ballots or absentee ballots or the like. But rest assured that we are well aware of the interference of these other nation states, but most of it is just to simply provide disinformation, and it causes problems with our trust in the election process. Not so much actually changing votes, from what we have seen.
While I have the floor, one more question occurred to me. Our NSA, how good are they in comparison with other countries that attack us, both in defending against them, and also how good are they in being offensive against these other countries in an aggressive manner?
They're very effective. But the NSA's activity is not directed towards inside the U.S. defensive posture. It is for corporations. It's mostly defensive governmental, and then also offensive against our adversary. But I would say that they are extremely effective and the best in the world.
Okay, thanks.
Steve,
Yep.
do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. How much jeopardy is our power grid in, first of all? Could they knock out our entire power grid and grind our whole United States to a halt? And the other thing that I've noticed, for over 20 years, I've done call for action down at Channel 2. And it's very frequent, at least once a month or twice a month, people call in that, believe it or not, they do these stupid things and they're scammed out of thousands of dollars. We call them the Nigerian scams. I don't know if it's in Nigeria or where they're at, but it's a lot of times it's elderly people. But it's just amazing to me how they can, how stupid people are when they give them their numbers or whatever they have to get them and lose all their money, or they get into their bank account. And how frequent is this? And so those are my two questions.
What was your first one again?
The power grid, how vulnerable are we that they could get in and just they could take down our whole power grid and and cause everything to stop here in the United States?
It's possible. I mean, over the years, we've attempted to shore up and create better defensive barriers to our power grid, but it's still possible. That's one of the reasons why predominantly DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, is focused on that. defending and creating better protective measures around our critical infrastructure. But it is possible, and it's constantly attacked. That's why it's getting better and better. But as it gets better and better, the adversary also will change their tactics, and so it's a cat and mouse kind of game that always changes. But it is possible. It's not 100% secure, and that's why we always just have to be ever vigilant. As far as we hear a lot. We get a lot of calls here about people being scammed, and they prey upon either the elderly, or they prey upon individuals who may not understand technology very well, and it's a constant issue.
We have time for one last question, and Gloria Morgenstein sent a chat. What are the top 5 things an individual should do right now?
Well, hold on. Let me look at my slide here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so there's 5 here. So password manager, and then change your password to password manager. Do the 2-factor authentication. So you can have 2 things when you're logging in. Look at possibly a cloud backup. Learn more about these phishing attacks that you see on a daily basis through KnowBe4, and I'll send this out to you guys. And then also look, if you have a lot of computers or you're really concerned, if you have very high net worth, look to an outside IT expert that you can contract with to come in on a monthly basis or so, or however often, to help you with your technology needs, and just be a resource for you to ask questions. So I'd say those are the top 5. Just so happens to be listed here. But once again, I'll send this out after the presentation to you guys.
Jarrett, thank you so much. I think that we're gonna wrap this up. Norman, do you think we're a little bit over time, but I think we're very good. Thank you so very much, Jarrett.
Yep. And if you guys have any questions, you want to shoot me, Norman, you guys have my contact information. So if you have another question or something we didn't get to, just let me know what it is, and we'll get it answered for you.
Yeah, we can put you in touch with Jarrett. I want to thank you so much, Jarrett. It was much more revelational than I was expecting, and looks like your firm really covers a lot of bases.
Yeah, we try to. Yep. We appreciate you guys' time, and thank you for having us.
Well done.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.